You're listening to the Embrace Family Recovery Podcast, a place for real conversations with people who love someone with the disease of addiction. Now here is your host, Margaret Swift Thompson.
Welcome back. In this episode, we meet Jay, a father whose son, Jason, struggled with the disease of addiction for nearly a decade before tragically passing away at the age of 26. Through heartfelt reflections, Jay recounts Jason and his family's story from a promising young athlete to someone grappling with the weight of a substance use disorder. Please meet Jay.
The Embrace Family Recovery Podcast.
I'm really grateful, Jay, that you've chosen to come on the podcast. I know this will be a very meaningful conversation for people that watch and listen. And I want to give you the opportunity, because I would introduce you in many ways, but I would love you to give yourself the introduction that you would want. And I always ask people when they come on the podcast who your qualifier is. So who in your life had the disease of addiction that led you to explore and learn about recovery for yourself?
Yeah, it was my son, Jason. So I have a daughter, Jenna, and my son, Jason, was younger than Jenna. And yeah, Jason is the reason that I'm here today.
Prior to Jason having the disease of addiction, was anywhere in your family system, had you been exposed to it without necessarily disclosing who for confidentiality, whatever's comfortable, but did you have exposure to the disease of addiction in your family history?
No, addiction was very new to me. So as a matter of fact, I'm still learning about it. And I wish I would have known back then what I know now about addiction.
I hear that from a lot of families. I hear a sense of regret or remorse that I wish I knew. And I understand it because I have that feeling with clients I've worked with who have passed or not achieved the recovery they desired. But I think it's so important to know that you do the best you can with what you know when it happens. And that's the gift you give your child, your spouse, or whoever it is you love with this illness. So do you remember the day you learned that he had struggles with substances?
Oh, I remember very well. We had many days prior to that, while I was still in high school, even, that we could see that he had changed. But he had a shoulder injury. He was a very good pitcher in baseball on the high school team in 11th grade. And between his junior and senior year, he was just playing a game of pickup football and he hurt his shoulder. Didn't know what happened at the time, but so long story short, he couldn't pitch his senior year and it crushed him. So we were wondering what was happening with him. We knew he was very depressed about not being able to play his senior year and showed in his grades. And I think he struggled to graduate, to be honest, but he did what it took to get out of there. Yeah, so he had issues. It could have been 2 or 3 years even that he's just not getting any better from this. He's, out of high school and into college, and he did pitch again in college for a year. And with that said, he did what he had to do to qualify to pitch with his grades and stuff and nothing more. And so to answer your question, one day in our backyard, I remember it like it was yesterday, he said, "Dad," which he hadn't called me in a long time. It was just, like that all the time. And he goes, I have problems with pain meds. And it goes all the way back to when I had my surgery for my shoulder. And he said, I just could never get off them fully. I got off them for a while and then back on them. And that's why I'm like what I'm like. So yeah, that's the first I heard of it. So for me, I was like, this is awesome. That's something Dad can fix. It's, just like an addiction. It's not this mental illness that we thought it might be, or severe depression or something that I can't fix. And so I wouldn't say fired up about it, but at least we knew what it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So you had answers and you felt like you could help solve the problem.
Right. Exactly. Dads solve everything. So.
And a
Yeah.
natural feeling of a parent. I think both
Yeah.
sides of moms and dads, we are the ones that clean up the boo-boos all the way along. So why would we not think we can help fix this problem? That's what's so counterintuitive about addiction, isn't it, Jay? It's not the same. You can't fix it for someone else.
Right. Exactly.
So when you said before he shared that with you on the lawn, you two were kind of like this. Talk to me about that. Was it the frustration of just like, how do I reach this kid? What is going on? Like the unknowns led to the battle? Was it partly his wanting to keep you at bay because he, not necessarily consciously, but he needed to keep everyone at bay to continue using? What do you think it is in retrospect?
Yeah. Yeah. In hindsight, I think he was probably embarrassed and ashamed and that it had even gotten that far, because he, all through his life, we were pretty good friends, as far as father and son can be a friend.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he just, to me as a father, why are you doing these things? Why don't you ever have money? You have plenty of jobs. Why are you getting in car accidents all the time? Why are you doing this? And yeah, it was just, I didn't have a clue what was going on. My wife didn't have a clue what was going on, and he always needed something, and he just wasn't that close anymore. It was just really hard to go from, coaching him in baseball and just loving everything he did to him keeping us at a distance all the time.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned Jenna, his sister. Did he ever tell her earlier? Did she know? Was it a struggle for her as a sister to understand, or did she have a better sense of it but felt scared to share?
I think I don't think she had a sense of his addiction. She had a sense that he was probably smoking pot and things like that. And I think she'd end up missing things, like money and items from, her room. And they, towards the end, didn't get along very well. I shouldn't say they didn't get along. They just didn't associate with each other. But she would tell us as parents that, Jason isn't the angel you think he is. And of course we didn't want to hear that. And we weren't quite seeing probably what she was seeing. So she had probably a better sense than we did, but I don't think she had any idea that he was addicted to painkillers at the time.
And I think what you describe is a very common sibling experience that's really challenging, right? They may know more, but they're in this dual relationship between the parents and the sibling. Plus, they're seeing behavior that they think is not okay, and they're mad at them, but yet they're worried. But like, do I tell? Do I not? It's a tough spot for a sibling when they're growing up next to someone in this illness. And it's interesting you describe the distance between them. I think that the visual that I use for that, or that I think of when I hear that is, of course, there's distance. There's an enormous buffer between the person and everyone around them, which is the substance or the disease. And it creates this inability to kind of reach in and touch and get hold of and understand, because there's that necessity to survive an active addiction with a buffer to keep the people that love us away the most, because they're the ones who are going to try and stop it. And we think we have to survive by using. So it's a very complex situation that I think we try to oversimplify. And the woulda, coulda, shouldas don't do any of us any good, right?
Right.
But natural. I think it's a very natural parental role to take.
This podcast is made possible by listeners like you.
Hi, everyone. I am Margaret Swift Thompson of the Embrace Family Recovery podcast. I wanted to jump on in this bumper and just share how grateful I am that each and every one of you has chosen to listen, review, share this podcast. My intention is that anyone impacted by the family disease of addiction will get the opportunity to feel less alone and understand more about their journey and the disease with which they grapple one day at a time. If you would be so kind as to follow, subscribe, whether it be to the podcast platform or YouTube. If you would share with at least 3 friends this episode or any episode of the podcast. And also, if you have not written a review of the value you get from this podcast, please do so. That means so much to me and helps more people out there who won't know about this podcast without us doing this get an opportunity to find the support they so deserve. I appreciate you, and I thank you. Take care of you.
You're listening to the Embrace Family Recovery Podcast. Can you relate to what you're hearing? Never miss a show by hitting the subscribe button. Now back to the show.
So you mentioned you coached him and you had a good relationship prior to the disease taking hold of him. Baseball was a commonality you shared?
Yes. I played baseball as a child, and I played all kinds of sports as he did. He played football, baseball, basketball. He bowled. He didn't want anyone to know he bowled because that wasn't the cool sport, but he was very good at all of them. Any kind of ball he touched, he was very good and very humble. It was not that big a deal to him. But as a parent, it's like, wow, I've got this kid that this is so much fun to watch him grow. And, and I always say that me coaching him probably hindered him more than it helped him. But, we butted heads at times. And that's probably the hardest thing as a son or daughter to be, is the player with a parent that's a coach. Yeah. It's, you discipline the whole team through them and things like that. And I always realized what was happening, and I apologized to him more than but yeah, I mean, it was a cool time. Yeah.
Sounds like it. And it shows on your face when you talk about it. So I want to touch on a tough subject possibly, but I'm curious if you're willing. One of the things that comes along with this illness is an enormous amount of shame. And you talk about that with him being maybe afraid to talk to you because of that possibility. When you've watched your kid do all these sporting events and been active and excelled, and then you watch the decline and the change in character and the change in behavior, was shame a part of that for you? How do you discern that when you look back?
Shame for myself?
About him?
Not really. I didn't feel that emotion at all. It was just wonder and confusion, and I just didn't know what was wrong with him. But I wasn't ashamed of him. But I know he felt shame. I didn't know that at the time. Afterwards, I learned a lot more about everything that happened with him, and even we'll probably hit on it. But the class that I had with you at Hazelton that time, learned a lot about what he was going through there.
So I think that is one of the things about you, Jay. You don't appear to have struggled with the shame, that you loved your son. You love your son. You would do whatever to assist him. You just struggle with not knowing.
Yeah. Well, one of the hard things that, I don't call it shame, but as Jason was getting out of high school and doing some college, he wasn't very dedicated to it, but all of his friends and peers were being successful. They're, moving on and graduating from college. And the hardest part for me, I think, was, talking to their parents.
Absolutely.
Little Johnny's, going to be a doctor now. And what's Jason doing now? And our answer was always, he's just finding his way, but I didn't really feel shame there. It was just a hard question to answer. And you kind of got tired of answering it after a while, and you felt good for the other people, because
right.
All those kids, either I coached them or I knew them and I liked them, and I still know a lot of them today, and I still talk to them today. So good for them. But it was hard when you watch your son just in this spiral and you don't know what it's all about.
And did that lead to isolation or pulling back, or did you stay engaged with families?
I would say stay engaged with families. Yeah.
Didn't change that.
No. When it did change is, hardly anyone knew that Jason had this problem until he passed away. But after he passed away, that's when it changed. I would say maybe some of them pulled away from us a little bit, like they just didn't know what to do or what to say, or felt guilty that their son or daughter was still here and successful, and ours is gone now. So that's the only time there's any kind of pulling back, I would say.
And let's talk about that in a minute. But since you brought up that Jason passed from this illness, talk us through what the steps were leading up to his passing. At what age did he pass?
He passed May 23rd, 2019, which he was 27 6 at the time.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I remember we got him into Hazelden when he was 25 before his insurance ran out. It was an ultimatum at the time. Either you go there or you find a different place to live. But so leading up to that, to answer your question, yeah, he'd been at Hazelden. He never really admitted that he had a problem that much. I don't do that anymore. And, he was like many people that are addicted, that I'm not judging anyone, but from other parents I've talked to that have had the same problem, just a master manipulator. He'd say the things you'd want to hear, and you you take that hook and go with it because it was hope. It was,
Of course.
I need money because I want to get help. That money would probably go towards drugs or something, but there's that glimmer of hope. So that's a whole different area.
Let's touch that, because I think what you bring up is very important, that a parent, a partner, child, everyone struggles with wanting to help and wanting to believe because they love the person. And the need to manipulate is almost a symptom of active addiction. In order to survive as an addict in active addiction, one has to do a lot of things to keep everything in the air and be able to continue to use. Desperation to need it, desperation to hide it, desperation to cover it. So yeah, manipulation, dishonesty, those are all symptoms, is the words I would use. So it's not about judgment that they're bad people, because I don't believe any of them are bad people at their core. The disease creates bad behavior to continue the using process.
Yeah, but totally agree. I mean, it's survival for him. It's
right.
And again, what we were talking about before, that's where the shame comes in and the guilt. And for them, they got to feel about an inch high for the things they're doing. I mean, we'd come home at times and go to watch TV, and the big screen TV's gone, or snowblower's gone, or jewelry's gone. Or, I mean, at the end, we had very little, and I don't blame him for it. I mean, he had to survive. At the time, yeah, I was angry as heck. I was like, what is going on here? But yeah, things would just disappear. And I mean, it's been 4.5 years. I still see things once in a while. Oh, I don't have that jacket anymore. And I just kind of smile, and it's just stuff now. Back then it was, I worked hard for that, but now it's like, it's just things. So,
but like you say, the anger, the natural reaction of, my kid wouldn't do this, but on their side, his side, the shame that that's how desperate he was, that he would take from his parents or his sister. It's a very low.
And I've said it a bunch of times. I'm kind of proud of him for some lines he didn't cross, like, our safety. And there's a lot of things that when you're addicted, you could do that could be a lot worse. And he had that line, and he never crossed it. And we're very grateful. I mean, I can't say we weren't scared at times. I always said we slept with one eye open because we never knew who'd be at the door, someone that he owed money to, or things like that happen a lot of times, but he did his best to keep that from happening.
So it sounds like he battled the disease, progressively getting worse, the illness within him, for about 10 years. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah. When he first passed, I'd say he was battling for 6 years, but no, it was probably 10 years. It was, I fully believe now that was pretty close to right when he had his surgery, when he was a senior in high school. So that was 2011 and past 2019. So yeah, 9-10 years, something like that.
And I'm probably a sidebar here, but one of the things that has evolved since Jason passed is a lot more awareness about pharmaceuticals and the horrifying changes they made to make things addictive. And I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but I wonder, did you ever feel angry at the drugs he was given medically for the right reasons, but maybe given an enormous amount of, not necessarily needed, that tripped his switch to be addicted? Or did you not struggle with that blame or anger?
Not as much as I think I should, but very early on, I wish I could remember the book I read, but it was about grief and what you're going to go through and how you're going to need to save your energy. And it's like, losing a son's like having a heart attack and going through that surgery, and that's where your body's at. So, so I kind of told myself there's certain fights or battles I'm going to fight, and certain I'm going to kind of let go. Yeah, it angers me, and watching the whole Purdue Pharma thing, and it probably angers me more what they did to a nation or a world rather than just one person. But no, I didn't get hung up on it too much. It kind of makes me bummed out that you could have a simple surgery and become addicted. Some people do, some people don't. It's just their makeup. But yeah, that's just totally sad. But I didn't really go out blaming people, but I still watch the shows, and I'm trying to think of when I'm watching on Netflix now. I just started watching
Painkiller.
Yeah, Painkiller. Yeah.
That's what made me think of it. I just started watching it too, and I find it hard, and I haven't lost a child to it. Right. So
yeah, it sickens you. Dope Sick was the other one I watched that was amazing, and I'll watch it again someday when I feel up to it. But
well, I think it's really pertinent that you just said something, I believe, very profound that you had the wherewithal to do, which was you read something that gave you a description that you resonated with. Losing a son's like having a heart attack and having surgery. You benefit from pooling your reserves because you need something to help you. And so you made an effort at that point to not go down the rabbit hole of the anger towards something bigger than you that you can't change, because you needed the reserves to take care of you and be a present to your wife and your daughter. Is that interpreting what you said accurately?
Yeah, exactly. It was for a little bit. It's like, let's go after big pharma. Let's join the crowd, and then quickly I thought, I'm just one little person in this big pool of people where people are already doing it, and I commend all those people that are doing it. But it just didn't feel right. It was, and it wasn't like I was afraid that I'm going to get sick or I'm going to be unhealthy. It's just like, I kind of got to get through this because I've got a daughter, I've got a wife, I've got, and we're all struggling. And I was just trying to save my strength and not go there.
Well, and it sounds like, in knowing a little of your story, part of it was you put your energy into your memorial and your baseball tournament and some of the things to go out and speak. Is that fair? Like, you put it towards trying to help others rather than go after.
Yeah, it just kind of happened. We've got this shop in Woodbury. It's an Herbalife shop that a lot of people come into. And one day, either Vicky or I put a wristband on the table, take a wristband if you want, this Jason wristband. And then we started putting pictures up, but it started with a tip jar. We had a tip jar, and it's like, I don't know, we don't really want to take tips, but we decided to give it to opioid awareness. So we didn't know what that was at the time. We're just going to pool this money and give it to them. And then we put a little picture of Jason, and the next thing you know, I made a plaque with him and told the story about Jason, because people had asked, who is this? And now we've got like a whole wall that's got his pictures, and it's just generated so many conversations. It's just such a blessing. And that's how it evolved. It's just like, well, that's what we're meant to do, is just provide an awareness, and we can do that. We can tell Jason's story. That's easy. It happened. I'm not a scholar, but I can say what happened in my life. And in the middle of all that, Jason's old baseball team, his coach, who's still coaching, can we have a Jason Pernew Opioid Awareness Day? And would you mind coming talking to the teams? So that happened, and we had special hats, and then the wheels just started spinning. Now Jason's got this ribbon that everyone knows, and that's on hats and jerseys, and yeah, it just became a big awareness thing. And out of that, one of the health coaches, that's a health teacher, said, "Would you come talk to my health classes at Stillwater?" And I'm like, wow, that's that's out of the box, but why not? I'm saying yes to things now, and so now I do that twice a year, each semester. And matter of fact, I go there December 5th this year, and I get to talk to, this year will be like 350 kids, split up between 5 or 6 classes. But it's just probably the hardest thing I do all year. It's just a drain. I don't know why. You tell the same story 6 times, and
it's a drain because he's your son. It's a drain because you lost it.
And you could just tell these kids are like, holy cow, he went here and he died. I got pictures of him with his Stillwater jersey and he gets so many good questions. It's just, and you can tell there's so many kids that are affected by this. It's, you have a class of 50, there's probably at least 10 that have some kind of tie to someone that they know.
Absolutely.
And they're young kids. They have ties to this stuff already. So
it organically came to be. It wasn't something you thought.
And instead of being, this activist, we're just people that make other people aware of what happened. So.
Thank you for joining us for this heartfelt conversation with Jay as he shared the lessons he's learned from Jason's story. Join me again next week as I continue my conversation with this courageous father, Jay.
I want to thank my guest for their courage and vulnerability in sharing parts of their story. Please find resources on my website, embracefamilyrecovery.com. This is Margaret Swift Thompson. Until next time, please take care of you